Welcome, Mr. Bhavnesh.
Thank you, Pavleen. It's wonderful to be here. I've, been part of I think almost all EWPC conferences, and I'm glad to be here today as well. We were all very excited to be in Dubai and meet all our friends and colleagues and the team of EWPC, Rishi, and everyone. But I guess we'll still have to wait for that to still happen.
Right, so true, Bhavnesh. But like they said, there's light at the end of the tunnel. It is going to happen. Maybe not now, but very soon.
Absolutely, Pavleen. Absolutely. And we look forward to it. Things are looking brighter anyway for the coming months. And I think the worst is behind us, is how I would put it.
I hope so too. We are going to be introducing the next speaker for this discussion, which is Miss Cyrielle Mohara, CEO and founder, Chic and Company. Cyrielle Mohara is a natural entrepreneur. She started her career designing jewelry for very specialized customers all over Europe and Asia, gaining deep experience and knowledge in both markets. After moving to China for lab and opportunities, Cyrielle started Spectrum Agency, currently one of the most sought after luxury events and wedding planners in China. Having a strong business background and a very particular style and French flair in her work, she has grown the company quickly and now designs opulent destination weddings for a discerning clientele. Please welcome Ms. Cyrielle Mohara.
Thank you so much for having me. I was actually really excited to go to Dubai because it was my first time attending the events. But I mean, life happens and then you find a solution. So I think it's actually amazing that you finally decided to do it online. We can still network all together.
Thank you so much, Cyrielle, for being here. And yes, you're right. At least we're doing it virtually, trying to get to know each other better. But the next time, I assure you, is going to be one-on-one, face-to-face.
Yes, I'm looking forward to that.
Absolutely. Our last speaker for this discussion is Mr. Julian Lever, Chief Protocol Officer, the Dapper Diplomat. Sales and service teams usually face their biggest challenge immediately after the trainer leaves. They now know what needs to be done, but the how is not as certain. Julian Lever's expertise is in applying practical etiquette techniques to leverage more sales and better service for decision makers and companies. Julian's background in the wedding world gives him the perfect tripod of experience. Please welcome Mr. Julian Lever.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Lovely to have you here, Julian. All right, then. Should we get started, everybody?
Sure.
Yes.
So let's start one by one. If you could tell us about an unconventional wedding that you did, a funny anecdote or a story associated with it that you would deem fit to talk about right now, we would love to hear it. So here we go with the storytelling panel discussion. Ladies first, we would like to go first with you, Cyrielle.
Okay, sure. I was thinking about one wedding in particular, but it's always hard, I guess, to choose, one wedding because for us, it's all of the wedding that we do are really memorable. And for each wedding, we really concentrate on the overall experience and on the storytelling of the couple. But there was one wedding that we actually did in Shanghai that was, I would say, had challenges, but also was an amazing experience. And this wedding, it was a couple that was coming from Beijing, but they wanted to get married in Shanghai. And they had 5 dogs, which they absolutely wanted to have at the wedding. So they actually had their driver drive the 5 dogs from Beijing to Shanghai, which is like overnight. I think it's about 18 hours drive. So the dog who could attend the wedding. And so we organize, the day or so around the dogs because there are quite a lot of restriction. Like the dogs had to stay at the W Hotel because it's the only pet-friendly hotel in Shanghai. But then the ceremony was at the Peninsula Hotel, and then the dinner was at the Bellagio Hotel. So it was like really complicated in terms of logistics. we not only had to attend to the 200 guests' needs, we also had to attend to the dogs because, you know, we had these 5 dogs that couldn't go to other places. So yeah, I think that was something that was quite interesting for our team, and also how we brought all of the guests in between the hotels. And since last year, so because before we do a lot of overseas wedding, but obviously now China has pretty much closed their borders. So we shift all of our destination wedding to within China. And what I've noticed also from a lot of our couple is that now they actually really want to bring their pets. So it's kind of like, okay, we cannot go to our wedding in Bali, but let's make the best of it, and you know, let's bring our pets to our wedding, and then they're really part of the celebration. So I think this is for the past wedding that we've done. Every time they bring their dogs, and I think they try to make the best of the situation, even if it was, you know, not their dream destination wedding. Then they can still bring the dog with them.
Well, thank you so much, Cyrielle, for that lovely piece of information. Now we move on to our next speaker. Bhavnesh, can we have your bit on the topic, please?
Sure. So let's talk about, are we talking about the last year, a COVID wedding, or are we talking about an unusual wedding we've done in the past?
We would love it if you talk about both. The more, the merrier.
Okay. Wonderful. So we did a wedding a few years ago. It was about 3 years ago. And it was extremely unusual and close to my heart and the company and my partners, because it was a cruise wedding. So we did a wedding on a cruise ship sailing from Barcelona to Marseille to Cannes and back to Savona in Italy. We had rented the entire Costa cruise liner. This was 1,250 guests, 300 crew. And because it was an Italian ship and Italian chefs, we had to take about 75 chefs to cook Indian food. Now, the entire theme of this wedding was based on a Bollywood film. So because the film was shot on a cruise, the client wanted the similar experiences for themselves and the guests on the cruise ship. So we planned all our, 3 events, 3 days of events. We had 20 hours of activities going on onto the ship, right from morning breakfast to the after party till 5 a.m. They had different artists board every day in different ports and go back because of performances every day from Bollywood. We had the hampers curated from Harrods, the London store, which for every room. So every guest had 2 bedrooms, one to sleep and one to keep their luggage, because the whole ship was ours. And so it was one of the most amazing and surreal experience for us, for the crew, for the client, the guests, because it was something they had never seen before. We had we have the Bharat, which is the Indian, where the groom dances and comes to receive the bride, and we had that on the top deck of the ship with 1,250 guests dancing with the backdrop of Cannes at the background in France. So it was just amazing. So that was, for me, definitely one of the most memorable weddings because it was a full buyout of a ship, a full of that size and magnitude, which I don't think is happened before. And for us, it was something new and it was really amazing. Now let's talk about something closer to now and the last 1 year, right from 1,250 guests to, we come down to, in India, the wedding season is actually from October to March, April. And so we had a beautiful wedding planned in March, actually. And this was, there was a Bollywood film director, and his wife is also a Bollywood actress from the past, and their daughter got married. And we had this beautiful palace hotel in Jaipur booked, and it was for 220 guests. So we managed to get 220 guests in for a wedding in March before the second wave hit India, and lockdown hit us in April. So this was another very, very beautiful wedding. A lot of Bollywood celebrities attended. So we had to create a bubble, right? The whole process was that every guest was tested before they flew out from Mumbai to Jaipur. As soon as they landed, they went into the hotel, and we did another RT-PCR test when they landed in, because they needed one to get back in 2 days. So back to Mumbai. So everybody who was in that hotel was tested. Every artist which came in was tested. Every vendor, every photographer, everyone who had to be around anyone were all tested. The hotel, everybody was taken care of. So it was really a moment where everyone, after almost 11 months of lockdown from April last year to March this year, came out and had a great celebration. It was beautiful, really one of the old palaces of India turned into a wedding venue, and it was magical. And I'll quickly share another one, which we did in July. This was again coming. I'm sharing the numbers with you guys, right? So this came down to, this wedding was supposed to be in April with 500 people, and then came down to 75 people in July. And this is an influencer called Juhi Godambe, very popular in India. And she had these dreams because her wedding, I heard Gideon talk about Instagram weddings, and she's very big on Instagram. So everything was planned and designed according to Instagram, and how it will all look, and the stories need to be told, and through social media. And so when the numbers came down, she was quite upset. And then we said, don't worry, we will create the same magic even with the smaller numbers. And we did so. And it turned out to be really intimate and special and beautiful. And everything was very personalized, because in those 75 people, everyone really mattered, because here in India, our families are more than 100 people with extended families. So to really cut down that list to just 75, it was people who really mattered. And so it was another beautiful experience. But now I think we're looking forward to coming back with our larger numbers. And so these are the few weddings I wanted to share with you. Pavleen. Hi.
Yes. Thank you so much, Bhavnesh. I didn't know you did Juhi's wedding. That was absolutely beautiful.
Yes, we did Juhi's wedding, yes.
Lovely. Thank you so much for those stories. I think we feel like we relived those weddings the way you told them. So it was absolutely beautiful. Thank you. Now we move on to Julian, your bit on these weddings, on the weddings that you hosted, sorry.
Yes, thank you so much, Bhavnesh, for having me. And it's quite early here where we are. So I was just thinking, the COVID has been just such an interesting experience for all of us, right? And here in the United States, and specifically where I am, I'm in Dallas. And normally I do destination weddings, and so we're traveling all over the world, and usually they're smaller, and so you can do these incredible intimate experiences. But this last, or I guess in 2020, I was going to do an Indian wedding here in Dallas, and we were about to have 2,000 people, which is really an unusual number for me. I know probably for you, Bhavnesh, that's like a normal crowd size. But we usually don't have that many people. My weddings are usually in the 200 range and down. And so they were scheduled in March of 2020. And as we got just closer and closer and closer, right, all of the COVID news started to creep up. And so their wedding actually ended up being 1 week after the shutdown. And so people were already in process of coming to the United States for that wedding. And so we had to make the really hard call to shut it down and unwind the wedding. And it was just really quite a process to unwind for us. We had 250 separate vendors that needed to be dealt with for this wedding, and unwinding all of that hard work was just really quite a process. And, in the beginning of COVID, we didn't know, right? And so I think that's like the event planner's worst nightmare is to not know an answer and to not be able to look into a crystal ball and just create magic right away for a client. And so we started moving this wedding, right? And so every single time that we moved the wedding, so we moved it 4 times for them. And so every single time that we moved it, it was, it takes a month to kind of move everyone, get everyone realigned. The family is realigning with other family and all the travel and kind of just getting it to where it needed to be. So we thought we had it all settled for April of this year. And it had scaled way, way back to around 250 people. And at that point, also in the United States, people were starting to be vaccinated. And so the older crowd, who they were very worried about, had started to get vaccinated. So that was wonderful. But in February of last year, there was a really horrible, horrible ice storm in Dallas, and or really in the whole state of Texas. And basically it shut down the power grid in Texas for 5 days. And so because of that, there was all kinds of interesting complications that we didn't know about until really 2 weeks before the wedding. And the main venue that was going to hold this huge wedding, basically, that had been scaled back, got flooded. And so it got flooded and damaged. And so they were not able to repair the whole venue in time. So 2 weeks before this massive installation, they called and said, oh, we're not going to be able to have this wedding. And there are not that many places in Dallas where you can all of a sudden pivot into kind of a completely different design, because this venue was a concert venue. And so it had a huge stage, and it had just all of the built-in conference and concert facilities that we would have to recreate basically overnight. But working with the team, there's this incredible designer here in Dallas named Todd Events. And so I was partnered with them, and just leaning on every single vendor that we had to really reimagine this wedding and redesign an entire wedding in 2 weeks. And really, we were able to pull it off, and it was a huge success. And it was just really incredible, because also in that we had to create a bubble as well, kind of like what Bhavnesh was talking about in terms of testing every single person and making sure that all of those who could be vaccinated were vaccinated. And ultimately it was very successful. There were lots of tears along the way, but the family just rolled with it, and I think it's just about resilience in this time, and knowing that everything that we do as planners isn't going to work out, but just being willing to pivot and lean into whatever new opportunity it is, and then kind of bring your clients and your vendors along with you is definitely been the biggest challenge, but I think also the biggest reward in terms of doing weddings in this time in our lives. And then there was one other wedding that I was just thinking about while I was sitting here is I work a lot in Italy and on the Amalfi Coast. And the challenge always kind of with destination weddings is figuring out how to get all of the specific things that your client wants into a certain country. And that has always been just a puzzle that I really love to kind of figure out for people. And whether it's you're bringing it in your luggage, or you're shipping it, or you're praying as you go into Mexico, and there's a little button that you have to push, and it could be red or it could be green. And if you get the green one, then you run with your luggage through, right? And so sometimes these clients, they ask us to bring all kinds of crazy and interesting things in. And that specific wedding was in Ravello. And this client really just insisted on these very specific linens to bring. And so we had created kind of this whole scheme, and we had gone through all of the process of checking with the authorities and gotten the proper documentation to import these linens, and because it had to be this certain specific color. And so we went through the whole process. We crossed all the T's, we dotted all the I's. Everything should have been just fine. But when they arrived, somehow in the shipping process, whatever the piece of information that needed to be on the box had become dislodged somehow in the shipping. And so the Italian authorities said, absolutely not, you cannot bring these in. And it just ensued kind of 2 days of negotiation with them, and bringing in all of the people that we needed to negotiate and kind of convince them that this was the proper way to do it. But there was really touch and go for kind of 1 to 2 days of are we going to get these things? And the client was really upset in the beginning of the process, but then just kind of leaned in and really was very helpful and did everything that they needed to do. And ultimately we were able to get those and bring them to the wedding. And it really was a beautiful and magical affair. So jumping through hoops is really part of our job, and is just a lot of fun, so that's what I got.
Thank you so much, Julian. Like you rightly said, resilience is the name of the game. And when you're in the wedding industry, you have to make everything work no matter how, right?
Absolutely. You got to make it work.
Yep. Okay. So thank you so much, everybody. We do have a couple of questions for all of you. I have a question for all of you. Cyrielle, this is especially for you. Like how Julian and Bhavnesh mentioned that they managed to do large weddings during the pandemic. Not very large, but smaller weddings. But how is the situation in China? Have you been doing such kind of weddings, or has it changed? Has it gone back to the new normal?
Yes, so actually for us, so we were the first one to be hit by COVID. And as soon as this happened, so we had to change our plan for the overseas wedding. So some couples decided to do the wedding within China, and some decided to wait. But yeah, we actually started doing a wedding quite early last year. Like I think in Shanghai, we were one of the first company to do the first wedding. And it was 250 guests. So right from the beginning, because I think the government really controlled it really well. And so from May, so it was last year, May 2020, was this 250 guest wedding. But of course, there were all the protocols. So it's the same, everyone was tested. And then we actually have QR codes in China. So, like with different colors. And it also track like where have you been, because different region, maybe they would have some case, but like in Shanghai it's pretty safe. We never really had a lot of cases in Shanghai, but if you're coming from another region, then you might be coming from a region where they had a lot of cases. So with this code, with this QR code, they could really control it. Which was amazing, because as soon as there was a new region that had a lot of cases, they could, call everyone and make sure if you were a contact, or, do the tests. So I think from that side, honestly, we are like much better than the rest of the world, because we actually started doing the wedding from last year. In terms of quality, we still have big weddings. Like we have one is going to be 800 guests at the end of the year. But we also have much more smaller ones, like within 50 guests, which is usually quite rare for Chinese, because also Chinese, they like to have big banquets. So if it's within China and it's less than 50 guests, yeah, before it was something a bit more unique, but now it's becoming the trend, I would say, because they would choose, let's say in Sanya, which resemble Bali, and then it will be like below 50 guests.
Okay, all right. That is quite an interesting viewpoint. Now that we know everybody's in the same boat practically, which the whole world
Yes.
is.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's. I think it's a trend, and as a lot of people mentioned, like Gideon mentioned, that intimate and smaller doesn't mean that you need to skimp on decoration, or they actually want it very lavish, but it's just that you have less guests.
Right, the lens is on you. Everything has to be perfect because there's so few people. You have to mind your P's and Q's.
Yes.
So the
Yes.
next question is for you, Bhavnesh. I wanted to ask you now that intimate weddings are the new trend, like Cyril said. What is your favorite bit about intimate weddings and a not so favorite bit?
So I think the most favorite part for us is that the detailing and the chance to actually do things for each and every guest, which they like and they can experience, which we could not do earlier. Of course, Julian said, our numbers here are big in India. So a 200-300 people wedding is actually an intimate wedding for us here. We've done up to 5,000, 10,000, 50,000 people receptions. So it's for me. I think definitely the ability for the bride and groom to participate in a intimate wedding of 50 to 75 guests is what I have noticed in India. Earlier, with the large, big, fat Indian weddings, when we used to go for meetings, there used to be, like you're sitting in a boardroom, and there were about 7, 8 people from each side, 4, 3, 4 from each family side, and everybody was taking active participation. The uncles and the friends and the aunties and the dear bride and groom were all lost in translation. But here, we're finding the fact that at least they are now really active and they know what they want because it's about them. It's about what they like and not about only the family anymore. So definitely that is the big change I have seen, which is welcoming. And of course, the smaller numbers is something which I don't think it's going to last very long. I'm already planning larger scale wedding for winter and the coming year, early first quarter. So people are looking to come back with a vengeance. I think when they say it's revenge shopping, I don't know if it's revenge weddings, because in India it was a lot of um, a lot of people have waited, Pavleen, to get married. I think the people who really got married in COVID were families who or couples who couldn't live together due to our culture and restrictions, or people who wanted to travel for visas, or really who really wanted to get it done. But I see a lot of inquiries coming in. People have waited. There are multiple inquiries because in India we've got these auspicious dates. There are weddings we've had to turn down because of that, because you cannot duplicate yourself. So I see a lot of demand coming back for this winter season, which is great.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Bhavnesh, for that tip and that information. We have a lot of audience questions popping up in the chat. So the next audience question, I'm going to be asking Julian an audience question. Julian, Iwu Basil is asking, how do I attract destination wedding clients?
That's a great question, actually. I started my business in destination. I love travel, right? And so I think a part of attracting those clients before you have them is about communicating to your audience, whether that's on Instagram or Facebook or in your blog, that you love to travel. And sometimes you don't have the opportunity to get a destination client, but you can get on an airplane and you can go travel somewhere, and you can do a site tour. You can link up with a travel agent who can connect you with different hotels in a region that you would like to work in. And so that's really how I kind of started the process of going into destination. Is I have a group of friends that really loves to travel, and so I've just been traveling with them for a very long time. And then when it kind of came time for them to do their weddings, then they all started doing them in destinations that we had been together. And so that's kind of how I started in that process. But if you don't have anybody to travel with, I just encourage you to go and travel and document it, and really do a great story about it, or create something on your highlights and showcase that you've been to a certain place that you would like to work.
Thank you so much, Julian. I think that's a really interesting way of getting the international clients. And my next question is for Cyrielle. And somebody's asking that now that weddings are opening up, are we preparing for a wedding boom, just like Bhavnesh mentioned? And how do we prepare for this? And if everybody could answer this, especially Bhavnesh who brought it up, if everybody could answer this one by one, how do we prepare for the wedding boom?
Sure. So should I go first?
Sure.
Yes, please, Cyrielle.
Okay. So I think, yeah, definitely, because a lot of the clients from last year also postponed. So you have your clients that have postponed, and then you have new inquiries. Sorry, I don't know what's wrong with my video. Okay. So yeah, so you have your clients that postponed from last year and then new inquiries. And also there's something I've noticed, I don't know in the other countries, but for us since last year, we have really, really last minute demands for wedding. Like we had quite a few weddings. We only had 1 month to organize everything. They just booked a hotel and they didn't even have a dress. They didn't have the planner. They didn't have anything. And I feel it's because like now this situation is changing every day. So a lot of the couples, they're a bit afraid, I would say, to take a decision. Let's say, oh, we're going to do our wedding next year. But then they don't even know next year what's going to happen. Maybe we're going to be on lockdown or, something will happen. So they really tend to take decision last minute. And so in China, it's possible because, everything moves really fast. But yeah, I wonder in the other part of the world, like, do you have the same and how do you deal with it?
Well, Cyrielle,
Yes,
very well
Bhavnesh.
said. Very well said. What do you do? We're having the same. Well, it's a good headache to have, I think. I'm happy that I have multiple inquiries on the same day. And after last year, I can say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm already blocked by somebody else and I can't do it. So I think it's a good feeling because I think last year was not very nice for our industry, and because we always thought weddings are foolproof. In India, we will never have a recession in our business because everyone will get married. But I think last year taught us no, never take anything for granted.
That's true.
So we're preparing in the best way possible. We've got inquiries in. We are hiring people on project basis to help us because we don't know. Honestly, if you increase your permanent employees at this moment, then what happens when there's a third wave and a fourth wave? Here we're all happy, but we need to be prepared, like all governments and everybody are prepared. We are also talking to our clients, and we also have plan A and plan B where guest lists are concerned. We're also contracting with the vendors and hotels in that fashion, that in case the numbers go down, what are we going to do? So there's definitely, we're planners, so we've got to plan for everything. So we are planning for, whatever situation may arise. But on the other hand, I'm a very positive person, so I'm taking things in a positive way, and I still think the worst is over. People are getting vaccinated at a crazy pace in India as well, internationally, everywhere. So I think the worst is definitely behind us, and all we have to do is, definitely plan for what we're planning, the numbers, and definitely for a smaller number in every thing. The difficult part is when clients ask us, oh, but our numbers are now half. So why do we need to pay so much? And that's I think the question of the whole entire COVID pandemic is all over the world. It's the same question. So I turn around and tell my clients, I say, we have started planning for 3 months or 4 months. Of course, the numbers go down, and a week before, and then the man hours are put in, the save the dates are gone, the RSVPs are done, the decor designing is done, the 3Ds are made, the rendering is done. So actually, if your numbers go down, it's only the catering of who the food will come down, or your banquet will be from a full banquet hall to half. But everything else is really put in the efforts. So this is what we need to educate them, which we didn't have to earlier. So this is one challenge which we faced in India. I think everywhere. So that's I think, why do we have to pay so much when the numbers are down?
That is quite a funny take on that. Why do you have to pay so much if it's half and the people are half and right? How do you explain that? Julian, if you could answer that question about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say in the United States, we're really seeing the boom. And in Texas specifically, obviously you have all the postponements, and then you have all the people who don't want to wait anymore layered on top of them. And so it's just, it's an inordinate amount of email. I think for us, that has been the biggest challenge of just keeping everyone straight and keeping everyone in line, and really the inquiries for next year are insane, and kind of to speaking what you're saying, Cyrielle, of like these very short-term turns of they want it yesterday, and they have like come to you last, right? Because they're like, oh my God, I booked all these things and I have no idea how to put them together. And so that's been very interesting. And I will say my 2022 is almost like totally closed out. So it will be interesting to see, because I don't even think we've really started to see the boom, because people who will get engaged in this next season are going to want to try to get married in 2022, and there's not going to be anything available for them. So that is going to be the interesting piece of it. And I would also say the other big problem right now is with the supply chain, right? And the cost of everything kind of doubling and tripling and quadrupling. And so that has been kind of a rude awakening for everyone, specifically in floral, because there's all these budgets that we have already created with the client, and then you have to go back to them and you say, okay, look, so they burnt all the flowers in Holland last year, right? And we can't just make Mother Nature produce more flowers, and so all of a sudden there's just this backlog, and then everyone is trying to get something, and shipping has gotten so expensive. And so just we're different types of educators now, about supply side economics and how all of that works, when people maybe didn't pay attention to that in school. And it's also been interesting too, I think, because all of us probably deal with wealthier clients who experience the pandemic in a little bit of a different way than the rest of the world. And so they are very used to getting what they would like to get right away. And they're not used to getting no as an answer, And so that's been a very interesting fine line for us to have to explain to people, yes, we would love to be able to do this for you, and here are 9 different alternate solutions, but no, we cannot produce exactly what you're asking, because it's just not possible. And so the reactions to saying no in this business have been definitely interesting throughout this last little period.
Rosaline's disappeared. Oh, here she is. Okay.
Apologies,
Welcome
everybody.
back.
Even I was not devoid of any virtual complications. Really apologize.
No worries.
We're all stuck in the rut. What to do? Okay, thank you so much, everybody. Just a last question to end this session. What do you think is going to be the favorite travel destination for the weddings to come?
I can talk about us in India and around India for sure. So definitely within India, Rajasthan is going to kill it like it did last year as well. They've got the best hotels and properties and destinations for Indian weddings, and the weather suits our wedding season, which is October to March. And similarly, the UAE, which is closest to India, Middle East and UAE is going to be popular for us because of the weather and proximity. And, so clients are willing to take a risk to go up to the Middle East from India, which is almost a 3-hour flight. So these are the two destinations for us within and outside India.
Okay, and Cyrielle, what about you?
So for us within China, so definitely Sanya. So Sanya is a tropical island in south of China, and it really resembles Bali. And I mean the same. They have all the luxury hotel, amazing services. So since last year, the hotels there they're pretty much all the time full, and for wedding is the same because we're sort of similar as in India. We have the auspicious dates, so it's like everyone wants the same dates. So Sanya definitely, I mean, for next year or so, is still going to be Sanya. And I think once the borders reopen, we're looking at Southeast Asia. I think more because it's close to China. I mean, you have a lot of direct flights. It's maybe 5-6 hours to go to Phuket or Bali. So in terms of safety feel, the Chinese couple and their guests will feel that's easier to go to this country rather than going to Europe, which is a minimum 12 hours flights. So I think, yeah, that would be the first countries once we reopen the borders that we will travel to and we will do wedding.
Okay, thank you. And Julian?
Yeah, so in the US, I would say that right now, Colorado is really internally doing very well. They kind of have managed their whole COVID situation really beautifully, and all of their venues have kind of come back really strong. It's beautiful there. There's mountains. You can have something in the spring or in the winter there, which is lovely. And the coasts where people used to go, California, they've just been having a lot more difficulty. I would also say kind of within the United States, the destination locations in the US of Hawaii and the US Virgin Islands are both doing very well because you do have to be vaccinated to visit both of those locations. And so it's almost its own little bubble. So you don't have to create a bubble for guests, which is really nice. And then I would say Europe is kind of going to come back on fire next year for us. Lots of inquiries all over Europe, but specifically Italy. Americans love to go to Italy. And so hopefully we work all of that out with the changing everyday border situation. But that's kind of the direction that I think it's headed.
Great. Thank you so much, Julian. I hope that everybody gets to travel in the coming years everywhere and no corner of the world is barred from it. So thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Cyrielle. Thank you, Bhavnesh. And thank you, Julian, for a fantastic storytelling discussion. We all were really entertained, and I hope all of you were too.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Lovely being with you guys.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Lovely to have you.
Bye-bye.